Why do I hold XRP? Because Ripple's the chosen one to lead the new global digital payment system, and they use XRP. In 2013, the Federal Reserve began looking for faster payments options. 2 years later, an action plan was born and a federal payments task force was created. It included one company focused on crypto, Ripple. In 2014, the World Bank and Better Than Cash Alliance, which includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, and the governments of 32 countries, put out a report called The Opportunities of Digitizing Payments. 1 year later, the Better Than Cash Alliance featured one crypto company on their website, Ripple. Today, Better Than Cash Alliance and all other UN initiatives are focused on a single agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. You can see the SDGs logo on Bill Gates' lapel, world-leading companies, the Better Than Cash Alliance website, and on the UN's official exchange, Exchange. What crypto is Exchange officially utilizing for their carbon credit solution? XRP. The world will move to a new international standard for exchanging electronic messages between financial institutions by 2025 called ISO 20022. Who was the first ISO 20022 member focused on distributed ledger technology? Ripple. Who's partnered with over 300 financial institutions, including Bank of America, American Express, PNC, Santander, SBI, HSBC, Standard Chartered Bank, Bank of England, India, Singapore, Scotland, Australia, and Indonesia, the largest banks in Japan, Canada, Egypt, the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Morocco, Bhutan, South Korea, Brazil, and Latin America? Ripple. Who is a former employee overseeing the Federal Reserve? Ripple. A former employee overseeing the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock's digital asset division? Ripple. Leading Australia's CBDC effort? Ripple. Who hired a former Treasury of the United States? Ripple. 2 former Federal Reserve attorneys to their board? Ripple. 2 former Clinton and Obama advisors, former Minister of Defense and Economics of Germany, former business director at Swift, former Swift board member, former CFO of PayPal, former head of the DTCC, former chief business officer at Uber, former VP of Amazon, and former SEC chair on their legal team? Ripple. Who's a member of the Digital Pound Foundation, Digital Dollar Project, Digital Euro Association, Mojaloop, IMF's high-level advisory board on fintech, Hyperledger Blockchain Consortium, Open Payments Coalition, Faster Payments Council, Global Payments Steering Group, Cross-Border Working Group, International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications, Crypto Climate Accord, University Blockchain Initiative, World Wide Web Consortium, and a featured partner of the World Economic Forum with 3 members of their team directly listed on the WF website? Ripple. Now, does Ripple and XRP sound like they're going to disappear, or do they sound like they're part of a much bigger plan? You decide.
Ripple does, because it's not just the currency, also you're very involved in blockchain.
Absolutely. So Ripple sells a blockchain technology to banks and payment providers and other financial institutions to do real-time settlement between banks. So today, if Morgan wanted to send $10,000 to London right now, the fastest way for her to do that is to drive to Newark or JFK and fly it there. Our view is, in a world of the internet, you can stream video from the space station, you should be able to real-time settle between banks. We sell technology to banks to do that.
And the banks are getting on board with this because they know there's a lot of paper pushing and also a lot of money attached to those settlements.
For sure. So we have over 100 banks working with Ripple today around the world. I think the vast majority of banks, like 99.9% of banks, actually are paying other banks, the kind of the global money center banks like JP Morgan or Citibank, to make those settlements. So a lot of the banks are very excited about democratizing how these global payments flow.
There's a belief that you could transform the global payment system over time. Although then the alternative argument is you need a centralized, you can't have it decentralized, that it actually benefits from efficiencies. I would assume you come down in the latter.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think anytime you can do something without that central counterparty, you're going to reduce friction, which is measured by time, cost, speed. So by removing that central counterparty, going direct from point to point, you can skip going from the Bank of David to the Bank of Morgan to the Bank of Mike. You just go directly to the Bank of Mike.
So if the immediate opportunity is efficiencies in this area, of the actual kind of nuts and bolts sort of plumbing of the financial system, how does that relate to the value of the Ripple tokens or of the Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies? They're taking on a separate life, it seems, from the future of adoption of this technology.
It's a great point, and I think one of the things we all have to remember is that the value of a token over the long term is really going to be derived by its utility. What problem is it solving? How big is that problem? How many customers do you have? There's no question there's a lot of hype in this system, and I don't actually think that's a good thing. For Ripple, we use this digital asset called XRP to settle liquidity needs between banks. So today there's $27 trillion parked at different banks around the world so they can make payments between each other. Our view is you can use a digital asset like XRP to do that in real time. Because XRP has been so efficient, it settles the transaction about 3 seconds compared to
just passes through that currency for that period of time.
I mean, what is the next move, on Ripple's roadmap, in your opinion? To put you on the spot here.
No, it's very simple. So I think one thing, if there is one message that you can get in this room is Ripple is not an ordinary company. We are not here to have a small market share or do X, do Y, and make small amount of money or something to happen. We are here to make a dent in the universe. Either we will change the remittance universe, the way you understand, the way value gets transferred across the world, between people, between institutions, or we will just fade away. So it's almost 0 or 1, and some of it comes from our Silicon Valley arrogance. Some of it comes from, that's the reason 6 years ago, we were born with the mission of moving money like information moves today, right? And we are making it possible working with the existing ecosystem. So I think this is a key differentiator about Ripple, and that's the reason we are a monoline company. Every day we get tens of ideas to say, why don't you do security settlement? Why don't you work in trade finance? Why don't you do X, Y, Z? And what we tell them is, just cross-border remittances is $155 trillion problem. We'll solve this first. We'll make a difference to everybody who's present in this room. And once we have made the difference, then only we will look at something else. So we are like, Google is for search, Ripple is for remittances. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it right, and we will not rest till we earn your respect and your business.
If you go by that, I'm not selling my XRP.
Do you believe that there can be two existing world reserve currencies to simultaneously exist?
I do, and I think that could happen. I think it's quite realistic that a lot of the world is just done with the dollar as their reserve currency. And I think that there's a lot of places that are willing to try something else. And one of my scenarios, and I don't think it's going to play out quickly, but like one of my wild case success scenarios for a digital asset is if countries start to realize that the US dollar is not going to be the reserve currency forever. Other things are going to be the reserve currency. And the same thing that we saw with banks. Like people, when we started selling software to banks, people would say to me, why would a bank use something that like you guys were selling them when they could use something that was like made by banks? And what they didn't realize is that, only like 10 banks in the country, on the planet, are Deutsche Bank, HSBC, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan Chase, like the ones who would build a system that the entire planet would run on. For the rest of the banks, that's 6,000 smaller banks, those are their biggest, strongest competitors. Those are the entities they hate the most. They would not want to use the system built and maintained by them because it's going to be biased in favor of them, their biggest and strongest competitors. And I think the same thing could happen to nations. Like every nation would love for their currency to be the world reserve currency. That's helped the U.S., that's grown the U.S. economy, quote unquote, unfairly by leaps and bounds for decades. And every other country would be like, yeah, we'd like to have the world be the world's reserve currency. But the only countries that could possibly pull it off is the U.S. holding its position, maybe the EU, maybe Russia, maybe one or two others. But realistically, most countries know that if there's going to be a new world reserve currency that's a country's currency, it's not going to be them. And so they might actually prefer a currency that nobody can control to one that's controlled by their largest geopolitical rivals. And so that's like what I think is the biggest possible success scenario for digital assets. If these countries are like, okay, well, the US dollar can't hold on forever, but it's not going to be our currency because no one's going to want to repeat the US dollar scenario. Nobody but the EU wants the EU to replace the dollar, right? Nobody but Russia wants the ruble to replace the dollar. Nobody but China wants the yuan to replace the dollar. So maybe they could settle on a currency that nobody could control rather than one controlled by their most powerful geopolitical rival. So if you want a success scenario, that's the one that I think is the most likely.
But the money question is, how do you get everybody to agree?
Well, I mean, they might agree if the alternative is that their geopolitical rivals force some new replacement for the dollar that's not, if they just replace, the old boss with a new boss. If the choice is no boss, if that happens to make a bunch of cryptocurrency people rich, I don't think they're going to see that as too much of a minus.
That's good.
It was great talking to you guys.
I got one question. Just one.
You want to take one? Go for it. The first one's for you. IMF. Do you see IMF holding crypto assets in the future? I did not put that up there.
Remember, I'm from the legal department. I'm supposed to be very conservative about these things. I don't want to go into great details about
Maybe
the IMF.
I should take what the IMF is going to do.